I'll make my way up and down and go from there. So this evening we're going to cover elements of CBT and hypnotherapy, and we're going to underpin up some neuroscience as we go along. There's a lot to cover in short time. We've got about an hour and a half to cover about 20-something years of work, really, so it's a challenge. However, I'll meet you in your map of the world and give you some ideas that maybe might seem like realizations. An idea being an association, linked to an association, then we have a pattern of behavior. So in a sense, in hypnotherapy, in one sense, we can give people a number of ideas. And the idea that a person might have growing up is that smoking, they see their uncle smoke, and smoking's cool, then you've got a behavioral pattern. Then many years later, when we talk about stimulating realizations, they go into an emphysema ward, and they see the effects, or at least what they say the effects of smoking are, and that could associate a new idea and a new behavior. So for me, what's really important going forward, whatever approach you use, understand the person. And their mind is unique as their thumbprint. So really you want to find out what their drivers are for change, their values, what's important to you, being a very powerful question as a motive to change. Because that can be leveraged then. And when you're doing hypnosis, then you can use their values, their drivers, to help them change. If it's important to them, then there's a good chance they'll follow it through. So if the person's life circumstances change, and they have children, for example, and they think that smoking could be an issue with them having children because they want to participate in sport, and they've heard that smoking could cut their life short than what it is, then there's enough drive there. So knowing what's important to them in the context of the outcome they want. So I always start with a well-formed outcome, being what are you wanting to achieve, then I'll underpin that very heavily with what is important to that person. And if you heard some of the iTunes I do, the hypnosis iTunes are very generic. And they're useful to some people just no use at all, because they're not tailored to that person. If I do one-to-one session, it's far more tailored to the individual, so I can sort of resonate with them. So I'm sort of touching on it as we go along, and thank you for coming along, and I'll do everything I can, and you'll be able to watch it again if you miss anything this evening, to give you as much information in a very short time that we've got. So what we can do very briefly, which is quite useful, is an exercise, and for me, it's developing acuity, awareness, understanding the person. In a lot of the hypnosis I do individually, I generally use the person's language back at them. Because I could walk in this room and I can appreciate everyone looks different physically, I can see that. I can make the assumption you all think the same, and an even more dangerous assumption, you think the same as me. So we know that, and having had a conversation with neuroscientists, one of the best in the country this morning, we know that we've all got our own reality. Our reality is vastly different, based on a number of factors, biologically, psychologically, sociologically. So very brief, just a couple of minutes. So if you turn to someone, maybe someone we don't know very well, and that's it, we probably don't know anyone very well, let alone ourselves, and maybe tell them a story about a learning experience, and see if you can sort of switch on to what they say, and repeat that experience back to them, as close as you possibly can with the words that they use. So for example, if I was working with Brian, okay, and you told me a significant learning experience in your life, then I need to recite that back to you as close as I can in, say, a couple of minutes. And that experience could be something you learned on holiday, it could be in a book, it could be in a course. It's entirely up to you. So let's have a quick go at that, and then we'll sort of hit the ground running. Yeah, if you partner with somebody, you can give it a shot. Brilliant. Okay. So maybe we should Okay, I'm just mindful of time. If you haven't finished this yet, you'll get a chance to finish. We'll get to it. We'll get a chance at some point. It's not this evening, then something you can work on. I have a question for you. Who remembers the first time they learned to speak? Who can go far back to the first? Who can remember the first time you've learnt any language, any words? Who can go that far back? You can go that far back? Wow. Okay. We want to know what your first words were. Okay, that's really fascinating. Okay, that's really smart.
Remember the word?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can share if you want. You don't have to.
Yeah, because the word all.
Okay.
Let's
and you can remember the
time.
Can anyone remember the first time they learned to speak? Okay. So, how do we communicate? Do we communicate through what are our methods of communication? What are some of the methods that we use to communicate? Language being the obvious one, and only one of us in the group can remember their first word. Yet, all that said, now what other ways that we communicate? Yeah, exactly, tone as well, very much so. So, before we sort of roll into the seminar, what I really want to take into consideration, and we haven't got a lot of time to go into it, when I first sort of started learning a lot of this stuff, some of the schools that I would sort of learn from were like, okay, you sit there and you kind of, you're passive and you observe what the person says and listen to what they say and take notes. And I think you're missing a huge trick. And I'm going to go into it later in the Q&A exercise. A big part of it is being aware the person's body language, what they say, how they communicate non-verbally as well. What they do, what they gesture. So they might gesture here, they might gesture there. And we can take that in consideration. We know about the mind-body being one system to the point that, you know, when you're nervous for an exam, you go for a wee, or you get bad news, your heart races, and we know someone's a lot of stress. That's people say stimulation stress is good for them. That sometimes they can break out in a skin rash and that sort of stuff goes on. So there is that connection there. I think what's really important to take note is, imagine you run over the age of 3, do you think we'd still speak the same language? We'd create a new language. We'd probably create a new language. So bear in mind that language is new, to the point that if you believe in evolution, we didn't always communicate, we communicate now. So if we went back to a few 100,000 years ago and I wanted a coffee, I wouldn't have the capacity to be nice and polite. Can you please get me a coffee? It'd be like grunting, and I think it's really important to take that in consideration in the therapeutic movement, to use gesture, use different experiences the person presents you with to facilitate change, and be really aware of what they do. So when we do the exercise, you're sort of taking note of what they say. Also, we know that, anyone know the percentage that how we communicate non-verbally? Yeah, I mean, they say 58% non-verbal, 30-some% tone, and 7%. I don't think it's entirely true in the sense that I don't think that the study was all about, but there is a very good indicator at how we communicate non-verbally. So sort of moving forward, I use this quite a lot, and meaning that, how do people know the answers? How do people know what's right, what's wrong? They know the outcome they want, but they struggle to get it. Okay, the mind says one thing, the heart says another. Who's ever been in a situation where the mind says one thing, the heart says another? Okay, and it's hard to bridge the two. Anyone find it difficult? You've got clients or patients or people you coach, you're trying to bridge what the heart says, what the mind says. The logical, so smoking, not good, shouldn't smoke, shouldn't eat that food, shouldn't do that behavior, and what ends up happening in the end, at an unconscious level, we kind of repeat the same thing over again. Now the brain likes familiarity. The brain likes to be familiar, just like, say, if you went to a new country and couldn't speak the language and you lost your wallet and passport, it wouldn't be a very comfortable experience. So the brain likes a sense of familiarity, so even if the behavior isn't adaptive in the sense that we have maladaptive adaptive, even if it's not what you want, you may still repeat the behavior because it's familiar. Okay, and it's the best coping strategy that you know at that time. So we can give people coping strategies, we can look at that, and when you think about it, there's been studies that suggest that CBT, it's not just me saying it, there's been studies out there, and you can have the slides if you want to, and I can email them to you, that hypnosis with CBT, or CBT with hypnosis, one with the other, or one and the other, can be more effective, which we're going to look at today, and there's been a lot of studies out there that suggest that by using hypnosis, CBT can be more effective. Now, to what degree is anybody's guess, and we can make assumptions, and one study might say one thing or the other, but I can touch on this evening how it can be. So one of the things that you can sort of bear in mind is that, okay, throughout life you have a combination of experiences. So I'm going to ask a question for you. What makes you the person you are today? What do you think has contributed towards you being the person you are today, or your clients are, or people you work with are? What are some of the factors do you think that have contributed towards being the person you are today?
Your experiences.
Yeah, experiences.
Genetics?
Sorry.
Genetics.
Okay, yeah, of course, yeah, for sure, definitely. Yeah, I think so. And some people might say genetics are more influential than others, some others, but we'd have to be very naive to think that they weren't a contributing factor, because they are physiologically. Eye colour, skin colour, hair colour. So yeah, there's a very good chance that they do contribute. So there's biology. There's a number of factors that sort of become the person we are. These patterns, they're quite deep in parts of the brain that we don't rationalise very well. So let's say, for example, you go home tonight and you hear a big bang in the kitchen. What do you think the first thing that comes into your mind?
Explosion.
It could be. And how often your heart rate? What's your heart rate, do you think? Yeah, racing. And so there's a part of the brain, so the limbic system, amygdala, that one of the components of the amygdala to recognise danger will recognise the threat. Now, unconsciously, not aware of it, bang, danger, someone's broken in, explosion, so on and so forth. Then you work your way down the stairs and you think, well, actually, the frontal part of the brain says, I left the dishes on the edge. And there's a tennis match, like ping and tennis match, and the two limbic, the frontal, the neocortex, a tennis match. Okay, it's the dishes. No, someone's broken in. I left the door unlocked, I think. Actually, I remember leaving the dish over on the edge of the drawer, and eventually you see dishes on the floor, they're broken, and they're in compromise, it's okay. There's still a cortisol rush, and the point being that the cortisol can flood the system for about 4 hours, if not longer than that. Have you ever had road rage before? Okay, you're still sort of, but you're not thinking logically road rage, you're thinking, you're personalising it, you're thinking, well, the person's cut me up. If a strong wind gushes and blows the car, you're not arguing the wind, you're not thinking the person's rushing their wife to hospital, they may be pregnant, whatever, you're thinking, okay, and then you've got time to think about it and you're okay. So bearing in mind our first response is quite automatic, which we're going to this evening. If problems were in the frontal part of the brain, we'd have a manual for everything. Because we know what's right, we know what's wrong, we're told that. To the point that we can develop a manual, do things step one, step two, and the whole world will be an very wonderful place to be known by things, love and peace. But the issue is that things are deeper. There is no maths equation for happiness. And do we all laugh at the same joke? Do we all enjoy the same song? Do we all enjoy the same films? We don't. So different things have different meaning to us. And words are labels to the point that love has no meaning other than the meaning you give it. So what one word means to one person means something else to somebody else. So understanding what the person is communicating, and we know that, okay, what's really significant is that you can give people the answers, but the frustrating thing is, like when I get people who've got anxiety who come to see me, I don't use the word anxiety. The reason being is that unless I give them a hypnotic audio, unless that was relaxing, then I won't use the word relaxing because they probably told themselves a million times before. Just relax, just relax. They've got a bad association with that word. So I use muscle energy. Control your muscle energy. And rather than counter or dismiss the anxiety, and before I do cognitive work, it's implying, okay, we can normalize it. Whatever the experience you've had has led you to where you are, yet all that's another change. We can use language like muscle energy. And that changes the whole dynamic. So what I'm suggesting at that point, we can almost turn the noun into a verb. So how are you anxieting? How are you doing anxiety rather than I've got anxiety? Because a noun is a person, place, thing. A verb is a process. You are not a noun. You're not redundant. You're always changing. So from the point of view of language, it's quite effective to use action words to get to the person's map of the world, their reality. And then we can put a blueprint in place that what do they see, hear, or feel? So if you have a wonderful experience, what do you see, what do you hear, what do you feel? And if you think of an experience that isn't as wonderful as a wonderful experience, what do you see, hear, and feel? So you've got a map of their reality, an understanding of what their perception is. Because if you think flying on holiday, what goes through your mind? Getting an aeroplane to go on holiday, what might go through one's mind? It could be sea, it could be sun, it could be the plane catching fire. It's all related to the individual. And we communicate with people based on our reality. Now you're thinking one thing, they're thinking another thing. So we want to get to the person's reality. We can do that by understanding their map of the world, for want of a better word. What do they see, what do they hear, what do they feel? Get an indication of and then we can guide them to where they want to go. Now what are they wanting? So in the case of the person who's got anxiety, if you're treating anxiety, you're treating something that's redundant. How are you anxieting? What are you anxious about? And we know that anxiety is caused by a number of things. There's many different types of anxiety, not undermining it. And certainly when I treat people with anxiety, one of the first things I suggest they do is see a medical person. I'm not a medical person, to see if there's any underlying issues. Reason being is that anxiety can have underlying issues that it's not my area to work with. And that's not to say they couldn't work with me eventually. However, there might be an underlying issue because we know that there's biological aspects of functionality that can cause anxiety that may not be able to, that aren't necessarily cognitive. And we'll touch on that as we go along in terms of the mind works. And it's quite fascinating because if you injured your little finger, it probably wouldn't make too much of a difference on your behavior. But if you have a trauma in the brain and you injure something the size of maybe a small part of your pinky finger, it could cause a massive personality change. Okay? And we know, and many years ago when I was going to Loughborough Uni studying sports performance conditioning, and a component of that was physiology, and I was getting into many different disciplines, modalities, and I used to have these conversations with some great physiologists, some great people in that area, and we'd sort of talk and I'd do research before the days of Google, and one story really was apparent to me, and we're reading back in the days where we didn't have, you can read it on Google. I shared the story loosely, I'm not saying corrected, it's been a long time since I read about it, but the guy called, I think it was Charles Whittam, something along those lines anyway, and he was in Texas in the 1960s, and allegedly, so the story goes, to cut a long story short, he'd been experiencing emotional irrationality for a long time, was getting more and more angry and frustrated, and he couldn't work out what was going on. He was getting counselling until eventually he got up one morning, he shot his wife, I think, and went to Texas University and went on a bell tower and shot 14 people. They did an autopsy in his brain, and they found a tumour growing in a part of the brain. I think, if memory serves correct, it was near the amygdala, or in an area, a region that is similar to rabies, that penetrates the lining of the brain. So it was almost like mad dog syndrome in rabies. So you would think that all the cognitive approach in the world is probably not going to help someone in that situation. Now we've got MRI scanning. These days you could scan someone and sort of get a bit of indication. And I use that story, not everyone who's got a tumour is going to go out and do that, obviously not, but I'm using that to show that there are other factors that contribute to behaviour. Okay? And I shared a story loosely, it's been a long time since I read about it, but it's quite significant for me in our approach. Hence I have an approach that before I sort of treat people, I make the recommendation that we exhaust any other area it could be. So when I'm training chiropractors, and did a few years ago in pain relief hypnosis, and I use hypnosis for pain relief, and hypnosis is really great for pain relief, so I work on distraction dissociation. I made the suggestion that before they run a protocol of treatment, I'm not a chiropractor, I don't know much about it, but I suggested they would send the person they were seeing to a medical person first of all. And I said, why would you do that? What you do is quite effective for pain relief. It's because 6 months later, if they come with a pain in the back and it's a tumour, and it could have been worked on, we've got a bigger problem that we would have had. So I think for that, safeguarding is a really, really big part of therapy, and sort of being aware. Not everything's somatic, not everyone's got a link, not everything's cognitive, and that's sort of something to think about as we go from there. So stimulating realizations, we watch movies, and we listen to music, and we like art, and we do it. Why do we do it? Why do we like films? Why do we like music? Yeah, and it gives escapism for sure. And how do we feel when we watch films and music? And
Feel relaxed.
we can do, definitely. I don't know how relaxed you would have been watching the Titanic, but you're right. Who's ever watched the Titanic, by the way? Okay, so I could have saved you a lot of time and told you what's going to happen. Okay, the ship's going to sink. They're all toast, and you still watch it. Some of you watched it twice. Who's watched it 3 times, 4 times? And people do because there's an emotional shift. Okay, and so we watch film, we have realization. Art also, we look at art and we have different meaning. What one person likes is somebody else. Okay, so human communication is best conceived as an art, not a science, in that respect. So people like music, and music elicits alterations in mood. If you're in a situation where a song has got you back on track, or a song's changed the way you feel. Or maybe you've heard a song at a funeral, and it reminds you of going back there, you were an anchor, and you just felt emotional. Or maybe it reminds you of a holiday that you really enjoyed yourself, and just felt this instant rush of calmness and tranquility. So we do it anyway, and these are movies and music and art, they're all capable of eliciting alterations in mood. And that's significant for me because one thing that we need to consider is that it's an alteration in mood that has an impact on how we behave, how we think. Okay? So let's say, for example, if you're having a bad day and you've had a disaster of a weekend and you get up and go to work on Monday and you hear there's redundancies being made and you want the job and you need the job and you've had a really bad weekend, how do you think you might respond if you're baseline, if you're not feeling good about yourself when you're going to work? What's your response, do you think? Are you empowered to take action? Or if you walk down the street and you see your best friend and they don't say hello to you and you're having a really bad day, what are some of your thoughts possibly? Your thoughts might be different to what they would be if you're having a great day. Okay, so potentially, yeah, definitely. So our state, our mood is imperative to our behavior, how we feel. While we practice grows stronger. So the more we practice victim states, the more we practice disempowered states, the better we get at being that. The more we practice empowered states, the more empowered we are. Okay? So we talked briefly about the brain, and now we know through neuroscience, and this is not me saying it, research, and we've seen through neuroscience that even among stroke victims, in rehabilitation, brain injury, we see the brain is malleable, we can change. They used to believe that the brain wasn't malleable or as malleable as it is in adults, meaning the brain couldn't change. The first 7 years, the imprint phase, the child is father to the man. Now we know different through neuroscience, the brain can rewire itself, but it requires effort, persistence, and the brain, and we know through experiments now that there are structural changes in the brain in people with anxiety who follow a course of CBT, who follow a course of therapy. The brain starts to rewire itself. And we know there's certain situations where the brain can be adaptive. It doesn't make sense in an MRI scan. Parts of the brain that shouldn't be working seem to be working functionally. So it's quite fascinating. But let's look very briefly at one component. So, and look at the thalamus. That gets information from all the senses. So, okay, we process through our senses. See, hear, feel being the big ones. Smell being the only sense that's universal, goes straight to the limbic system, which is why a lot of the commercials that advertise fragrance use biology, like sexual references in people who are attracted to the of operation, because that's universal, goes straight to the limbic. Taste as well. So we know that, but the thalamus gets information from all the senses, and the process sends the information to the amygdala. Now the amygdala, in the last few years, has had a lot of media around it being fight, flight, freeze, fear response. It's not the only thing it does, but one thing it does, it makes a judgment on whether to fight, flight, freeze. So we're talking the primal part of the brain here. A part of the brain, if we sort of cast our mind back to thousands of years ago, was responsible for, okay, if you saw a dinosaur chasing you, so there's a tribe, you're in danger, you'd run, you'd fight, or you'd freeze. Now we don't have these dangers in the modern world. We've got new dangers. But the brain can't differentiate between the two. So what are our modern day dangers, do you think, that the mind processes as a danger in the same way it would do as a dinosaur chasing it? It could be. Sorry, you build. Yeah, precisely, because someone's taken something away from you. So who's ever reacted to a text message or an email, and you think, well, I didn't react the way I would normally react, because you have almost like this part of the brain hijacks the frontal part of the brain. Okay, and we know from MRI scanning that, and what was really fascinating, the Stanford experiments. Now, once again, it's been a long time since I read about these and wrote and used them for some of my dissertations. They talked about impulse behavior. They talked about how in the 60s they'd do experiments where they'd have a group of children in the classroom, 5-year-olds, and they'd give them, I think it was a marshmallow or chocolate cake. Along the lines of, you can have one piece of marshmallow now, or you can have 2 in 5 minutes. Something along the lines anyway. And they found that the young people who took the marshmallow immediately, eventually, as they sort of studied their behaviour, were more impulsive than the ones that waited for the 2 in 5 minutes. So you can have a marshmallow now. When I walk out of the room and come back, you can have 2, your choice. Okay? So you'd like to think it's a combination of interactions with biology, psychology, social interactions there, but impulsivity. So we know now that people who have got good emotional control and resilience then do better in life, in the sense that they're more adaptive. So they probably won't send a friend a text afterwards saying, why'd you ignore me, horrible so-and-so? They might say, are you okay? Okay, they might not behave erratically and say to the boss, why are you making me redundant for? They might knock on the door and say, can you give me some more information? So they're able to regulate the response. And I'll put it to you, if you're going to go on an aeroplane, you'd like the pilot to be emotionally aware. You'd like, because if you had an argument with his wife or her husband the night before, you'd want them to be able to regulate the emotion. You're going to surgery, God forbid, you want the surgeon to be very emotionally intelligent and aware. But we don't spend a lot of time working on that part of the brain, or working on emotion. But we know that the amygdala can hijack the frontal part of the brain, because the amygdala is pre-screening for danger. It's looking for danger all the time. Whether that danger is a bill, whether that danger is a... By the way, some bills are dangerous, and more dangerous than others if you don't pay them. But ultimately, in the end, it's generally not going to be a worst-case scenario, like it would have been if you were bitten by a huge Tyrannosaurus all those years ago. But it's screening for danger, and it's building associations in the brain. And those associations are always around us. What we see, we hear, what we feel, which we'll talk about as we go along. Okay, so the amygdala pre-screens for danger, as we can see there, the amygdala over there, the flashlight's not working. And we're recording memory in the hippocampus part of the brain. Now, memory is not finite. Okay, in the sense that if you remember a holiday you had last year, if you talked about a day after you've been away, you got far more richer memory than you would have now. So time's not a healer, experience is a healer. Because the more experiences you have, the less room you've got for other memories in your mind from a richness point of view. So from the point of hypnosis, it's giving people experiences to do to help. Now I get the call quite regularly, and I got a call of someone last year saying, well, I've just broken up with my girlfriend, can you do some of that hypnosis on me? I said, well, I can, if you tell me what the problem is. He goes, I need to forget her, and rapidly. I said, okay. He goes, can I book a session? I said, well, you can if you want to. I can do a treatment plan for you to help you in the area you want help with. And he goes, I just want to wipe out my memory. I said, if you've got one session a day, 5 days a week for 25 years, it might just work, meaning that the brain doesn't work that way. So we've got this association, and ultimately, and we know the brain's more complex than that. And these memories get fired in these parts of the brain anyway. So it's all sort of interlinked as we go along. So cutting a long story short at the time, the amygdala activates the hypothalamus fear response. So if you see a vicious dog, what's the first thing that happens, do you think? You see a really vicious dog running at you. Yeah, for sure, definitely. And that's a logical response, you'd like to think so. In certain situations, a bill, you're going to lose a job. If a hypothesis, you're going to lose a job. And that's why mindfulness has made its way into the world today. It's really popular because it talks about being in the now, which is useful. The only thing I would say, and I love mindfulness, I think it's fantastic, it's very Zen-like. We don't live like they used to live back then now, because the Industrial Revolution, we've got times where, and I put you to the test, next time you're having stress in your life, and you've got things to be and places to go, you can't really explain to your boss, I just need to be mindful for an hour. Vodafone, I just need to be mindful now, the bill's not being paid. It doesn't quite work that way. We've got to be adaptive. So people put pressure on themselves even more, because we know the mind's always thinking. So for me, it's being creative. So it could be going for a walk, it could be playing tennis, it could be playing golf, it could be, and it's not an excuse for playing golf, by the way, it could be doing a number of things that just take you away in absorption. And because we know the problems of tomorrow we can't do nothing about, the past we can't do a great deal about, but we can do in the now. So that's one way we can solve an issue going forward. And the issue is that the amygdala can deactivate. And I think one person wrote a book about it called Emotional Hijacking. It might have been Dan Goldman, I think, I'm not sure, stand corrected. But he talked about how, and the thing is that this part of the brain, then your limbic, then your prefrontal cortex, the logic part of the brain just gets hijacked under extreme stress, and it just doesn't function well. So that's when you send that nasty text back. That's when you say what you regret saying later on. That's when you regret that behavior that you did. That's when the person regrets hitting the person for spilling a drink on their shirt. That's when the person sort of regrets swearing at someone for no real reason other than it's a response. So it's not always easy. We're all human, and we're all prone to anger, fear. It's a natural response, and I think the more we can use techniques and strategies for that, the better we become it. And my suspicion is it's a combination of interactions that take us to the person we are. We can always raise our game. and get better at what we do going forward. So for me, in anxiety, one of the things I do before I do any cognitive work, by the way, and any hypnosis or any CBT, cognitive restructuring, I get the people to learn to breathe again. And what I mean by that is, how do anxiety people breathe, do you think? People with anxiety, where do you think they breathe from? Yeah, high up. And if you breathe high up really fast for too long, what happens, do you think? You hyperventilate. And then when you hyperventilate, what happens then? And you get more panicking. So before I do any cognitive work with my patients with anxiety, I practice breathing deeper. And you can have a practice now if you want to. And by breathing deeper, because you've got the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for fight, flight, freeze, sympathetic nervous system, the dog's coming, boom, you go through the roof. Okay? The parasympathetic kicks in and calms the nervous system down. Everything's okay. The spinal muscles relax, the heart rate slows down, the breathing slows down. And I get my patients to breathe deeper, and they can practice as often as they can do, as long as they don't practice when they're driving, when they shower, or swallow water, when it's safe. But they can practice watching TV, and they can do that every day for half an hour in a week. Then they'll start doing it normally. It becomes an unconscious competence. Because they've breathed for so long, so high, it's not normal anymore. So that's why I need to think about how we can combine mind and body. Mind and body is quite useful. Does that resonate, everybody? We're okay with that? Yeah, okay, cool. Fantastic. So that's one thing that we can do as well. And neurons communicate with each other. Okay, so your brain's network is quite fascinating through chemicals, through neurotransmitters. Hence where people tell me and ask me, okay, they might have an issue in their life, and we know that there are a number of interactions that combine to the person being where they are. So there's no cure for anxiety, there's no cure for depression, for example. So from a biological point of view, the person may not produce as much dopamine as somebody else, and that could be an issue. Dopamine being the chemical that's the feel-good chemical that's stimulated when we do things that we really enjoy doing. So learning, if we can make it interactive and enjoyable, we're going to learn more of and enjoy doing it. But we know also some people do other strategies for dopamine. They might take substances, they might take chemicals, they might use the phone excessively. I've been writing a paper recently about excessive use of internet and phone. It's the dopamine release. It's addictive, almost like a substance, almost comparable to a substance where by being on the phone, it's almost like a coping strategy. Now, I'm not suggesting what is useful and not useful, and what's right and what's wrong, but it's being more self-aware of what we do is quite useful from an adaptive point of view, because we know if we're on the phone all the time and not focusing on tasks, we're not as effective from a business point of view, getting tasks done. We know substances, they're not good for us. But we also know that some people, and I'm not against medication, I'm not medically qualified, and I'm not medically qualified to administer medication, but I wouldn't dismiss it with people who may need it. Being, for me, let's treat the most pressing issue first. Being, if you, on Friday afternoon, you finish work, you start feeling a cold, and then on Saturday you read the paper and it says there's a massive swine flu outbreak, and you're worried about it all weekend, and on Monday you're racing to the doctor, and you, God forbid, crash the car and you've got a gaping wound on your leg. Do you go treat the wound? Do you go treat the most pressing issue? So let's go for the most pressing issue first, I think, in my mind, and then sort of work from there. So we know now, and certainly in my journey, and I've learned from many people, and some of the things I've learned recently at King's, which is in the top 2% in the world for the area of neuroscience, I believe, and a couple of people I've been speaking to from there recently, that the brain is definitely malleable. So in years gone by, the brain was perceived as being, that's it, it's carved in stone. To the point that we couldn't change. We know we can change now. We know that it's possible to change, and we know that we can also use experiences to elicit that change. Emotional experiences. Okay, so you sort of know where we're going at the moment with. So one way I would one metaphor I would use, think of a conductor, and you've got an orchestra. It's conducted the orchestra. So think of the conductor who's got all these musical instruments. You've got all these people playing all these instruments. He or she needs to get them to all play in timing to achieve that result. And the brain is pretty similar to that, in the sense you've got so much going on and so much information coming in. And you are then orchestrating it. Now we know some people struggle with goal-directed behavior. And we know that teenagers struggle with that more than adults because the part of the brain is not developed till about 22. So the teenager is more impulsive than the adults, well, at least scientifically, maybe that's not the case in all situations. And that's one of the issues and areas that we know that we could do a lot of great work in, certainly by using mindfulness strategies and self-awareness techniques that would really help them a lot with more adaptive behavior because they feel what you feel, they just don't have the processing power. The brain's not developed yet. Okay, and they're more impulsive and more prone to take risks. And that's obviously a spectrum as well to consider. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is an exercise with you to gel this part and the next 40 minutes or so, because you might have a curiosity, you might have an intellectual curiosity, you might have an experiential curiosity. I'll do an exercise with you, and some of the techniques I've formulated, because we've got short time, in my infinite wisdom, which encompass a lot of this, and we'll go from there. So very briefly, I want you to think back to your childhood, if you may, and your family and home, and consider the emotions that you were encouraged to express as a child. The people around you, carers, parents, teachers. I want you to think of some of the emotions that you were encouraged to express. And I say this loosely because of time, and you can come back and do the exercise if you choose to a lot of time. But think of the emotions you were encouraged to express, where you got encouragement. And now consider the opposite, what you were discouraged to express. Okay? Almost forbidden. And what emotions did your mum show? And dad show? And just think about the impact they've had on your life. Okay, these experiences, the impact they've had on your life. Okay, because they're good on that. Now, I worked with someone recently who's been very successful, and he said that he wishes, and he was going through a bit of a crisis because he'd been promoted where he worked, and his crisis was someone told him he had imposter syndrome. He got a job as director of the company, said, I can't fulfill this. And someone had given this label, and it was conformed to a label, almost like he won a Nobel Peace Prize on imposter syndrome. Wonderful, that's okay. So we turned that into a verb, and it's quite interesting really because he talked about his upbringing, and he said, okay, and we got a little bit deep and meaningful, and to the point that he said he wishes his mum was the mum he imagined the mum should be like, whatever we plus it to be. And I said, well, what would be the perfect mum for you? How should she be like? What are your rules? And he said, well, I don't think she was loving, I don't think she was tactile. And he told me, and I said, well, you know, eventually, not immediately, but eventually we talk about giving meaning. I said, that's probably a good thing. Why? How do you make that hypothesis? Because you probably wouldn't be the person you are today. You've got a wonderful family, you're a great husband, and you've got a great job. So it's contributed to being the person you are today. Okay, they're not always a bad thing. It's how we frame the situation. And I know from another client, and she, now I think children generally crave the love of both parents or both carers equally. Sometimes they crave it in a different way to others. Now, you know, as a parent, if those of you who are parents in the group, you love all children the same, but you love the children in different ways. And certainly in my experience with a client recently, a while ago, she craved the love of her father more than the mum, as it happened to be, and that led her on a behavioural pathway to get the validation from the dad. And this never stopped. So it was never good enough. So no matter what she did, it was never enough, which is a recurring theme in society we live in today, and in her own mind, no matter what she did, never good enough. And a lot of that stemmed from her early years in life where it was never enough. And she became a striver, and we all know how strivers end up eventually. It just never is enough, no matter what they do. So I'm not implying that goals aren't a great thing and aspiring to do all weird and wonderful things, but we need to also find some peace. Because the better place you are mentally, the better chance you've got to live an adaptive life anyway. So it gives you an idea how certain events shape a reality. And then we can look at the next part of exercise and the childhood memories where they affect you in a negative way. So the girl, well, the woman I was working with, in a negative way, those memories she had with her dad, in a negative way, it was never enough. She always felt inadequate. The guy felt was the imposter. Okay? And then I said 2 emotions that you successful in your life now, from early on in your life. Because it wasn't always bad. But the mind being the way it is, I call it the threat activation system. The mind, because our brain's meant to keep us alive, survival, not make you happy. You go to 10 stores at Christmas time, 9 treat you wonderfully, and you go home and your partner says, "How was?" and 1 treats you really horribly, shortchanges you. Which one do you remember when you go home? Because the brain, to keep us alive, will recognize danger, unless you train the brain. So think of the emotions that you use successfully now. Now, let's not class bad emotions, anger, frustration. They can be quite useful. Just don't stay there longer than you need to stay there. Because Mother Teresa, from what's the story goes, what sparked her into action was the sadness to see people not being treated. Martin Luther King as well. So people who've done big things in the world weren't always fueled by the fire, which is a wonderful emotion. Just don't stay there for as long as you need to stay there. So we can sort of emphasize and say, okay, certain emotions are useful, and see how you learn to make those feelings worthwhile. So, and whatever's brewing under the melting pot now, it may be early, it may not be the right time, but there may be a time you make that transition. But now it's in your awareness, and you think, well, actually, you know what? It didn't go the way I wanted to go, but the experience that's affecting you now can be a good thing. So I talked earlier in the seminar, normalizing can be a useful thing. And I can email you this because time is of the essence now, and this gives you an idea how we can structure things and integrate modalities to get a more positive, the combustion engine to change, to going forward. Going forward too, by the way, I've got to do this these days. Let's do seminars around the world. I'm not here to treat anybody. It's an educational exercise, so I'm not implying that what I do tonight is going to, do, because it's all individualized. And I also suggest you, as a therapist coach, to take that in consideration that no two people are the same. We don't treat people the same, but we get an idea, going forward. And I mentioned this before, and I wrote about this years ago, that when in corporation, we tend to do a lot of work in external attribution. So many years ago, when I first started working in corporation, about 15 years ago now, they brought me to work in a corporation, and they asked me to help them increase their sales. And I looked and asked them, how do you measure success? Because I didn't know a great deal about business. They said, we've got these KPIs. I didn't know what they were. I was ashamed to say at the time. I know what they are now. I said, give them to me, I'll study them overnight. And I sort of put a psychological spin on it. I thought, okay, they're all external attribution. They're all external factors you can't control. They're necessary. They are important. But if you put pressure on people, we go back to what we talked about earlier, they don't perform really well. So the next day I went into work and said, like a league table in golf, you need it. A league table in football, you need it. We need to know what our sales are, the baseline. I said, I've got an idea for you. So I shifted from external attribution to internal attribution. And said, why don't we use the HPI? Find on Google's Manual Creation, the Human Performance Indicator. Being, what can you control? Control yourself. You can influence other people, you can control yourself. So I said, let's develop a spectrum, 1 to 10 being high, for enthusiasm, motivation, confidence, gratitude for customer. And if we're going to do experiential exercises for the group of learners, the group of the sales staff, and they can be at 8 every day out of 10, the KPI should look after itself. Because if you've got a good member of staff who's enthusiastic, who's motivated, who's confident, who's got gratitude for customer, if every time you get an email from a customer or a client and you think, oh, I can't be bothered with this, if you go in with an attitude of gratitude, your behaviour is going to be different to what it would be. If you think, you know what, it's Friday afternoon, I can't be doing this. And it raises the game, doesn't it? And that's sort of what we reflect on. And they would go on to smash sales records and do really, really well just by giving it experiential exercise to focus on raising their bar to perform better. So we know a musician, we know an actor, we know a salesperson, we know anyone in any capacity goes into work demotivated, under pressure, you're not getting the targets, demoralized, not grateful for the customers they've got, will not function as good as someone going in there. Now, I'm not airy-fairy. I know that not Pollyanna, the world's a wonderful place, doing as well in the world. It's not. But if you go to work, it's the same energy to do something good or bad. We'll have off days. We'll do things that we regret we've done later. And that's normal, because we're human. But having a blueprint there, something to work with, can help a lot, I think, anyway, because states are key. And for me, it's the person who can be in a more productive state of empowerment will influence the outcome in any given situation. The person has the widest range of capacity, capability to adapt to certain situations and be flexible will influence the outcome. So you can be a victim, you can be an empowered state. And that makes a huge difference. And when I used to work in football at the highest level, at this point I wasn't working at the highest level, I was working for a team in League 2, but we had a big game in the League Cup against a team that was in the Premiership. And I got a call off the manager at say midnight, and he goes, "I can't sleep very well." I said, "Well, I can't sleep now either, because you just found out at midnight. What's the problem?" He goes, "I can't believe it. I can't believe it." I go, what's the issue? We've got 3 or 4 illnesses, we've got flus in the camp, we've got colds, we've got injuries, we've got to play the young players. I said, "Wow," you know, and he just went on and on and on about, you know, and he was right. We were unlucky, obviously, about, you know, big game in our life and everything seemed to be going wrong. And I said, "Okay, put the phone down, call me back in an hour." And he phoned back in an hour and he said, "You know what a great opportunity. We're in League 2, we've got nothing to lose. We're playing a Premiership club that's under pressure. I can play the young players. They've never played before. They're naive in their infinite wisdom. They're going to have fun, enjoy themselves. Let them express themselves. We've got nothing to lose. Go out there and play." So it's a more empowered state, one would think. Would you not agree? And for me, the whole dynamic changed. The thought process changed. So being self-aware is useful, because as we state there, the person with the widest assortment of states to respond with is going to have the most impact. So if you're a parent and you smoke and you tell your children not to smoke, what do you think is going to happen? Now, I'm not implying what you should and shouldn't do in your own life. I'm just saying, what do you think could happen otherwise if you didn't? When you tell them, actually, you shouldn't eat that food, you shouldn't drink that alcohol, but you're doing it, you're telling your students to be motivated, and you're turning up to class on a Monday morning, "Hi everybody, how was your week?" So we've got to go there first, to the state first, I think. Now, I'm not implying that we need to keep other people's problems, as a famous psychologist once says, that him being in turmoil and not having the key for his own well-being doesn't mean he doesn't have the key for somebody else. But what I am saying is what's important from the point of view that let's go to the emotion first. Okay? Now we know now through EEGs, time is sort of running out, I'm going to go through as quick as I possibly can, that the brain is more effective to change in certain receptive states. So we know now that when we're over here, around here, so who's ever read a book and been in the zone? Who's ever played sport and been in the zone? Who's ever done something really creative and just flowed? You've just been in that wonderful state and you don't know how you did it, but you did it. Sometimes how do you do that? You just can't explain. So when you first learned to drive, what was it like? First gear, second gear, okay? And now you can drive without thinking where you're going, okay? And if you drive somewhere often enough, you're on autopilot. You don't want to drive when you're here, very dangerous. But somewhere around here is quite useful from the point of view of change. Because if we're here, we've got this sort of guard, the gateway, that critical factor, that sort of, you know, good angel, bad angel type thing. If we can sort of bypass that, and if you take nothing else away from this evening, when you get up in the morning, you're generally sort of coming around into here, guard the go in your mind. So your gratitude list, and input in, input out in the morning, see what's scary moving in the evening, you go to bed and have a nightmare, you've got a bit of a gateway there, in the morning and in the evening, to do a bit of your own work. Because we know whatever goes into your mind then is going to seep into the unconscious mind. So you get up in the morning, you do a gratitude list, and you do it often enough, it becomes your default state. And if you're a parent and you've got children, and you teach your children the gratitude list, imagine their default state for gratitude when they get older. How much more empowered they'll be when the brain's really malleable. Because try to learn a new language now. It's a lot harder than learning when you're 5. So hence when I do talks in schools, it's encouraging it's not rocket science, but it is science in the sense that we know it works now. So input, out. If you get up in the morning, you watch the news, you read the newspaper, you listen to these talk shows, and you think that it doesn't bode really well for your well-being. Now I'm implying what you should and shouldn't do. I'm just saying that there is a gateway there in the mind. And for me, when I'm working with people, the idea is to get them to a more relaxed state for change, more receptive for change. Now, we don't have to have, and anyone done hypnosis in the group before? Okay, and there is stigma around hypnosis. Now, I'm not implying that they come in and you've got the watch and you wave that watch. It maybe you talk about an enjoyable experience that induces a state of focused attention. And what I normally do is I create an anchor, and it could be something they're good at doing. And they talk about what they're really good at doing, what they enjoy doing, and you create a state, and that can be your focal point, and extend that reality to where they want to go. Because think about things that you're good at doing for a moment. Think about the places you've been and really enjoyed. Think about when you first learned to walk, talk, and all the things you've learned that you do today. When you first tied your shoelaces, at the age you tied them, if you put an MRI scan in your brain, it would have been like one of them sort of massive earthquakes everywhere. But now, there'd be no real movement, it's unconscious. So when you drive a car, it becomes an unconscious competence. Okay? Behavior becomes unconscious competence for simplicity. Because our generalization is good or bad, do you think? They can be useful, because you're not reloading every day to do the certain things you learned the day before. Just watch that film 50 First Dates. Not encouraged to watch it, by the way, but she loses a short-term memory. As a result, she's got to relearn what she forgot the day before. That's what you begin to generalize. So it can be a good thing. You're not learning to brush your teeth, to get dressed, but it's also a negative thing because certain behavior becomes familiar and better than the level I know. Okay? And for me, we can work on that level didactically. Smoking is bad for you, and I know it's not good for me. Drinking is not good for me, that's not good for me. We know. But we can plant an idea somewhere here, and that idea, and the more ideas we've got, the more options, alternatives we've got, the more chance we've got of change. And we can use an idea, we can use metaphor, story. We work towards where they want to go, and we've got a better chance of change, being more adaptive. When we sort of get understanding and go under the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg, to use a metaphor, is the 10% we see. The conscious mind, the underneath the iceberg, is 90%. So, okay, you're breathing, your heart is beating, you do all these automatic functions, you're not telling yourself to do that, you do it. On autopilot. Behavior is the same, motion is the same. If I mention, can you feel the pen in your hand, the back against your chair, your feet on the floor, until I mentioned that, you probably weren't aware of it. Because the brain can only focus on a small amount of information in a given period of time consciously. They say 5 to 9, it's not completely accurate. Yet in saying that, it would suggest that we focus on one thing consciously at a time. But every experience that you've had from day one is at some level in here. Okay, and every now and again it crops up to here. Because even the most anxious person, or someone who's anxious to fly in a plane, there's 100 planes flying over their head every day, they're not looking for cover. It's only when they're aware of the consequence. Okay, so for me, we talk about CBT, it's about eliciting the automatic thought from an unconscious level and being more aware of it. Because the thought is automatic, it's implicit. We're very Pavlovian. If we look at some of the experiments in the last century, and we go to the 20s, I'm not sure if you remember the white rat experiment, so it took an 11-month-old baby who had no, I believe, there was no, had no physiophobia other than loud noises and falling, and they gave the baby a white rat, a tame one, the whole. Now this experiment wouldn't pass ethical ground now, but you'd get someone from behind hitting a mallet and making a sound. And eventually what does the baby do? When it sees the white rat, it panics. It's phobic. And any furry animal, then the baby is apprehensive, doesn't want to go anywhere near it. So I know from working with clients that, and we know from MRI scanning now, that certain meditation can activate parts of the brain. And we can activate the frontal lobe all the more for being more logical about a certain situation. So he must be the focused attention. And I know from clients I've worked with, I had a client come to see me years ago, actually from a course, And every time she'd go home from work, she'd feel really panicked and anxious. She couldn't work out why. She'd done all the thought process and distortions and restructuring and just could not seem to get her head around. Very intelligent businesswoman. And I had a go at regressing her. And I said, give me the emotion you feel. And we regressed it back in time to the very first experience she felt that way, hypothesizing. We know that it may or may not be accurate. But she then recalls the sound of a dog barking. And the dog that would bark, she was attacked by that dog. And the barking of the dog next door had the same sort of sound. So it could be possible that that could spark implicitly a response of anxiety, because social avoidance shouldn't go inside the house and leave again, staying in the house. Okay, and she became more adaptive and got her life back. So I'll sort of give you a bit of idea. So focus attention. We know from research now, alpha and theta waves. Alpha and theta waves creative. When you're creative, when you're writing dissertation, you're playing sport. We're around that area. Beta's conscious activity, which is quite useful too. And delta is that deep state. And that's sort of, putting it loosely. If you want information about understanding more stuff at the time. Now we look at CBT, and we can very briefly go into the ABC model. And it's not the events, it's our beliefs about the events. Okay, so putting it in plain English, we have a situation, nothing has meaning other than the meaning we give it. Okay, so you could be losing a job, you could be going through a breakup, and that's undermining what people go through, but the meaning we give it, our thoughts about that, influence our feelings, behavior, physical reaction. So if you see the person down the street and they don't say hello, what might your thoughts be? What could be some of your thoughts if the person just walks straight past you? Well, there's a possibility. There's a possibility. Yeah, there's a possibility. If they're making redundancies and the boss doesn't say hello, walk straight past you, what could some of your thoughts be? Yeah, no, there could be many things. Yeah, it could be a number of things that goes through the person's mind, but we can hypothesize that whatever's going through our mind is going to impact our feelings. If what's going through my mind, if you walk straight past me in Manchester, I may think, well, you didn't see me. And I might text you the following day and say, are you okay? But then I might take it personal. And I might start emotional reasoning, saying, you know what, doesn't like me, that person. Well, how do you know? And I had this with a session with someone I was working with the other week. I was doing some work with her, and she was adamant that someone that she worked with didn't like her. How do you know? I just know. How do you know? I just feel it. Wow, it's pretty powerful stuff, emotional reasoning, and it may be the case, I just know I'm not good at presenting. I just know I can't get the job. I get this feeling. Now there's a balance between intuition and labeling yourself. So we know the situation impacts our thoughts about the situation. So we talk about hypnosis, and a lot of CBT, so we can work around restructuring the thought process, from going from, okay, the person ignored me, they may have ignored you, you can't control that. You can control self, or they may not have ignored you. So we know that, okay, we can work on this level, but we know we can work on this level even more effectively if we can get to more creative problem-solving states, which we'll touch on shortly. And we know that we can break a problem down to manageable chunks. Okay? I had a woman who was delivering CBT with me many years ago. I used to work in offending institutions, a care home delivering CBT. Part of my remit was that anyway, to staff, and she was assigned to deliver CBT with me, and on the first, she's very academic, very bright young woman, and the first time she delivered with me, she had an experience. So 19 out of 20 people who give an evaluation wrote great things. One person said something really negative. The following week, she said, I can't present this week. Why? Because it's just been stewing on my head. I can't do it. And she knew all the answers, she knew all the terminology, and she struggled. I did a session with her, some regression, and there seemed to be an underlying schema from school where she was told off and go tell the class why I didn't do such and such, and that sort of stayed with her. And the wound opened up when she had to deliver. And I set up an experiment, got her to go to a speaking group in the town that she lived in to speak to new speakers, to talk about their experiences, to normalize it, and as well as doing in vivo and as well as doing imagery and a number of techniques, she improved and became a great teacher, but what I'm implying is that, okay, so the situation, our thoughts about the situation, so the thoughts might be losing job, going to be kicked out of home, can't pay my bills, feel nervous, anxious, behavior becomes erratic, social avoidance, physical, feel nervous, overwhelmed. So I can use interventions at every level too. I don't just have to work here, I can work behavioural, I can work on emotion, I can work on physical strategy to move towards a more adaptive state if we choose to do so. So it's a quite useful model because the triangle illustrates problems of function as well as solutions. Like I said earlier, the person is A, they want to get to B, so we want to set a goal. For the person wants to set a goal, you might have a goal for them for the session too, how they can improve. The goal being to present, the goal being to go for the interview, the goal being to improve their sport, the goal being to minimize their aggression. The goal could be go shopping again. The goal could be drive again after an accident, or just about anything. The goal could be a number of things really. So we've got an inroad for interventions too, for a specific problem, whatever that problem is. So it's a useful model to break an issue down, okay, and there's no reason why we can't integrate that with other modalities, hypnosis being one. Because we know this is really, really powerful, because we've got these underlying schemas. So everyone familiar with what a schema is? So very briefly, if you're not familiar with a schema, or if you are, and bit of reinforced learning in the last 20 or so minutes that we've got, so you've got these early experiences in life. The first cut is the deepest. And these early experiences in life, because you know, if a 2-year-old, and say a 3-year-old's told you're ugly, worthless, useless, what happens, do you think? It internalizes, self-fulfilling prophecy. You tell someone now, they can sort of, okay, that belief that the person has, shield it to a point. Because I know when I'm working with clients, confirmation bias kicks in. The client I'm working with who believes that she's ugly in the eyes of the corporation, even though she's been a successful model for many years and made a lot of money out and a career out of it, if one person says, your shoes are awful, she ruminates for days on end. If 100 people say you look really, really well, it goes in one out the other year. And that may stem from primal times where we wanted to get conformity in the group, confirmation bias. If you're outside the tribe, you wouldn't survive. Okay, hence we know from a neuroscience point of view, when we do marketing, people will generally like someone's post on social media in 2.5 seconds. They don't like 2.5 seconds, they probably won't like it at all. And they'll like what they can relate to. People like people they would like to be like or they feel comfortable with. Because familiarity, the brain, and that goes to behavior pattern. So the schema being here, okay, as an influence on our experiences. So there's a structured experience, so fire hot. Put your hand in fire, you won't put it there again if you don't like the sensation. So the child may put their hand in the hot stove and they won't put it there again. They have an association, Pavlovian. And we know that, okay, if we all decide to go for a walk in Manchester this evening, and one of us had a dog like this as a 3-year-old or 5-year-old, it was really loving, a wonderful dog, and we're all walking together, and one of you got bitten by that type of dog as a 5-year-old, and had a bad experience, and one of you had no experience at all, we could all debate. The dog's dangerous, no, it's loving. What's all the fuss about? Who's right, who's wrong, do you think? Well, precisely. The belief is the reality. So CBT is idiosyncratic. If the person believes in the green matter, the green matter. It's making sense to them. So we're not going to dispute that. If it's a problem, they may not be a problem. But it may be if they want to play in the park, if they want to walk through the park, if they want to do a presentation, and that's getting in the way. Because one experience, should that shape your reality? Should one experience shape your reality? And then you could argue with yourself saying, well, I know I'm knowledgeable, I'm competent. There's a difference between competence and confidence. Now, I might be competent, I might not be confident. If you said, Jim, do neurosurgery tomorrow, I'd say, no, I'm not a neurosurgeon. Can you fly a plane to America tomorrow? No, I'm not a pilot. It's not a question of confidence, it's competence. But most of us are competent to do what we would like to do. There's just something getting in the way. And a lot of them are these early schemas. So the woman I was working with years ago on BBC Radio Manchester, who had the goal was to reduce in weight, and one of the goals, sub-goals, was to go swimming again.
She had a schema around swimming pools. Had a bad experience, she never went swimming again for 56 years. Never went swimming again. She tried many ways to overcome the issue. It was an important goal for her because it would be the driving force be her getting more social. She retired, and as a result of retiring, and I don't recall if the husband had passed or they'd been separated, something along the lines, she lost a social group. She hadn't been away for many, many years. So it was an important goal to achieve, and we achieved that goal through generating experiences for her very rapidly. So it shouldn't take a long time to reverse something, in the sense that you can be flying on a plane, hit turbulence, and you have an association. You can get up on Monday morning, have a job interview, and your car breaks down, you spill the coffee over yourself, and you have a belief about the day. We can also reverse that. And one experience shouldn't shape your reality. One would think. Okay, well, we generally have our force we have today, yesterday we have today, and you have tomorrow. Like someone famously put it once, we have 60,000 thoughts per day. I'm not counted, by the way, but they're probably close to the mark. And all of them yesterday we have today. So 98% of your thoughts generally are re-offenders. So we never stop and think, what am I thinking? We run on autopilot. So I'm going to do a quick exercise with you before we do some other stuff very briefly because of time. I'm going to clap my hands every few seconds. I want you to write the first thought that comes to mind. So every time I clap my hands, the first thought that comes to mind, and we'll go from there. Okay, so the purpose of the exercise is to illustrate how we've got these automatic thoughts. They happen all the time. So one of the premises of CBT is don't believe everything that you think. In the sense the dog being dangerous is not necessarily true. The presentation being daunting, not necessarily true. The interview not going well is not necessarily true. The person not liking is not necessarily true. It may be true, but it may not be true either. And we form a belief, it becomes a reality. And when we form a belief that becomes a reality, what do we see? We see what we want to see. We see the dangerous dog. We see that bad review at the presentation out of 20. We believe that person who says you're hopeless because it reinforces what we believe at a deep level without challenging it. It's confirmation bias. It's a scientific fact that we will reinforce that belief. We won't challenge it. We'll work on autopilot. I'm not suggesting that all the beliefs that we have are bad. Most are probably useful. Most are probably good. But there are some that get in the way from going A to B. And by changing them in a didactic way can be useful, but we can create experiences of people too, which I'm going to do shortly. So the concept of CBT, cognitive distortion, you've come across that before? Okay, so Aaron Beck, considered the father of CBT, and it was popularized by David Burns. Very, very briefly, they talk about automatic thoughts, but we're not aware of them. Like the woman that had anxiety after she'd get at home, the person, the woman who had to do presentations with me, who felt anxious the following week to present. So it sort of runs at an unconscious level, at a deeper level. We're not aware of it. It's there, but we're not entirely aware of it, and they crop up. And I know in CBT, some people use in vivo role play to elicit the experience, or even a thought diary. Albeit you probably don't want to carry a thought diary when you're driving, when it's not applicable to use, but it can be quite useful to catch the thought in raw terms. So very briefly, because of time, and I'll send the information if you want to. These are sort of 10 popular ones here, as you can see. So the woman I mentioned about the presentation, she was the mental filter. All she focused on the one bad comment. The woman who I was working with, I mentioned earlier, the model, she's focusing on one comment. She's discounting the positives. Okay? Emotional reasoning, that person doesn't like me. I'll never get that job. So emotional reasoning. So you can see how we can label them, or should. Creating rules for people, ourselves and others. You should do this, you should do that.
labeling the other person, blaming. So these, and we don't have time to go into too much detail, I can email you, are some of the thoughts we look to elicit from people, so then they can rationalize them a little bit more, which is quite useful. I think it'll take us so far, perhaps not as far as it would do for experience, because it sort of goes into our mind. So we can elicit, we can start restructuring, and they're generally focused on ourselves, the others, the world. So the world's the dangerous place, I'm not lovable, they always have to get me. So they're the sort of areas that they tend to sort of focus on, these automatic thoughts. And hypnosis is quite useful. We talk about hypnotic experiences to alter that perception of reality. Just like when you read a book, when you watch a sunset, listen to a song, they've all got hypnotic qualities about them. All these things got hypnotic qualities about them, so we can disconnect. For me, one of the big things about hypnosis is what we connect to, what we disconnect to. Okay, so we connect to resources. So what did I say earlier about focus on what you're good at doing? Because you connect to more resourceful states and disconnect from unresourceful state. So I believe every component of hypnosis has an element. Every component of hypnosis has an element of dissociation, association, connection. And what I mean by that is, it's what we're connecting to. If you've got bad food in the fridge, it contaminates the other food, so you get it out. So dissociating from a disempowered state is quite useful. We talked about the map of reality, see, hear, feel, dissociate, connect to a resourceful state. So what I'll do sometimes when I'm teaching people, I'll go to early learnings. I'll say, well, you first learn to walk and talk and do other things that you've learned, because then you go into a more empowered state. And some of that's unconscious, and unconsciously, if you learn to do this, you can learn to do that. And that goes with behavior as well. So, okay, I've learned to walk, and if you think back to when you first learned to walk, remember that far back, what happened when you first learned to walk? You fell down, you got up. You fell down, you got up. It's a good job you had parents that encouraged you, said, don't give up now, don't bother no more. But actually you learn. So I think that's really important to consider that and dissociate from the aspect of behavior, emotion, that's not serving. So find a way of dissociating, so turning it into a verb, the problem, rather than a noun, can be useful, because we're always growing, we're always changing, we're not redundant. So we can consider that. And we look at a CBT approach very briefly. I'm just, because we're sort of going to have to pick up speed here. We can fire some questions at people. So if you take a maladaptive behavior, something that you're going for, an emotion, and we can ask questions, okay? And the questions you can ask is, we can stop, take a breath. Is it fact or opinion? What would someone else say? Is there another way of seeing it? A useful thing to say is, what advice would you give someone else? It's a good way to dissociate from the problem. So someone else is going for it, you're going for it, what would you say to them? We're giving advice, we're going to take our own advice. Okay, is my reaction in proportion to the actual event? Okay, is sending your best friend 100 texts saying you're a horrible, evil person for not saying hello in proportion to them walking past? Is sending someone an email saying, I hope you rot in hell because I didn't acknowledge you? So it's a good way to assess that. Okay, that's quite useful from that point of view. So we can sort of, these aren't exhaustive questions, by the way. We can ask several others. You can email me. I've got a whole list that you could utilize. But we know logic, heart will always win. The heart will always win. The unconscious mind. And in hypnosis, we can generate ideas, alternatives, because you get stuck in a pattern, and we can interrupt that pattern and do a new pattern. So the young person believes smoking is cool because they saw their uncle doing it. And we can then, smoking is uncool, and then a new behavior. And we know from watching TV advertisements, you see a lot of this going on. Because many years ago, when I was doing a big seminar in London, that big screen in London, I couldn't get to sleep after the seminar, my adrenaline was really, really going. And I was watching an advertisement, and we see advertisers doing really, really well, creating anchors, associations, and you probably remember the advert. And I'm watching the advert, and there's like a big screen I'm watching, and these girls are drooling over some guy. And they're drooling over the guy, and all you can hear is 11:30. That's an anchor, really, when you think about it. It's very Pavlovian.
and you see this guy being hoisted, who's like one of them Adonis, and he's a window cleaner. Probably not like your window cleaner looks like, not taking it away from him or her, but ultimately they're using biology to sell, they're creating an idea. Now, if I was advertising that product, I would probably advertise it differently. It wouldn't sell very well because I'd say it's water, sugar, and chemicals. You wouldn't buy it for £1.50, but then when Photo comes along and you fancy, I'm not going to advertise the drink, by the way, and you're going to have the drink, very implicit. So you're in trance anyway, on some level, in the sense that our behaviour is automatic. Break that trance. And we talked about ways you can do that this evening, and ways you can, a new reality. And the trance could be, you're hopeless, you'll never make a good presenter, you'll never do well. And that's a belief, and that feeling you've got around that belief leads you to a new reality. Okay? And generally, the earlier the experience, the more impact it'll have. So disconnect from that. It's quite useful. Finding a way to break that. And guide discovery is one way to learn. Because I know if I've got a football here, and someone stands alongside me and I sort of teach you to kick it, go through the steps, you can follow me and do it well enough, but I say, here's the football, go away for a week and learn how to kick it. There's a good chance next week, if you go away and learn how to kick it in your own way, you're going to retain the knowledge than me just doing it for you. Okay? So you may have an intellectual curiosity or an experiential curiosity of hypnosis, so I'll do a gentle process with you, if you will. And I'll do just a generic, calm hypnosis with you for a couple of minutes before we sort of break. So you've got a nice experiential of it, and I'll just check we're okay. Yeah, we're okay. Have a go. Okay, so perhaps you'd like to close your eyes. It's your call. You don't have to, you don't want to, but if you want to, you can. And as you close your eyes, perhaps you become aware of your breathing. And as you become aware of your breathing, you notice your heartbeat. And as you notice your heartbeat, perhaps you become aware of your feet on the floor or your back on the chair. And as you become aware of your back on the chair, you can make yourself comfortable. And as you make yourself comfortable, perhaps you'd like to go back to the time you felt peace and calm. And as you reflect on that time, perhaps it's a holiday, a family gathering, perhaps it's just a walk in the park, or perhaps it's all of the above, or perhaps struggling to think of a situation and just create a situation. And as you create a situation, or you see or you hear or you feel, and as you absorb the situation, you can reflect on things you learned in the past. And in this seminar, in the hour or so we've covered a lot in a short time. You may be feeling slightly confused, knowing at one point in your life, when you were a child and you first learned to walk and talk, you're slightly confused, but you learned it, and you kept on going. And if you learned to speak as a child, you can learn to do hypnosis or CBT or any other modality you care to learn. And it's just like learning your first language, and perhaps some of you speak another language. And the child asks the question, why? And I'm traveling one time on the train, and I'm admiring the beautiful English countryside, and the sun going down in a nice summer's evening, and I hear behind me a child say to the parents, why is the sky blue? And the parents say, it just is. And one of the other parents says, it's a silly question. And me, my infinite wisdom, was thinking, well, actually, it's a great question. Perhaps you should look it up. And as you process that, isn't it wonderful to know that in the past you've had problems and you've overcome those problems? And if you've overcome those problems in the past, you can overcome any problems in the future. And it's beautiful and delightful to know that we can grow. And as much as we want an easy life, and it'd be wonderful to have an easy life, we wouldn't be the person we are today. So you can get a meaning of everything that you've been through and just reflect on what that means. Because you're the person you are today based on the experiences that you've had throughout life. And as you galvanize that meaning, isn't it wonderful to know whatever situation you face with in the future,
you can overcome. And you can feel a sense of peace, calm, and tranquility. And you can feel yourself breathing deeper and feeling calm and focused. And just reflect on some of the things that we covered this evening and what you can implement in an hour, in 2, in a week, in a month. And as a result of doing that, any positive benefits that will, as a result of doing it. And in your own time and your own pace, as and when you wish, you can come back to the here and now, or you can stay where you are, and I'll call you tomorrow morning. It's your call. So it's a little bit gentle, you know. So if you want more, you can email me, or you can. I've got plenty of iTunes out there. It's quite generic to sort of illustrate and comes what we've covered so far. So what you practice grows stronger, and we've got very brief time now. So you practice fear, if you practice anger, aggression, you're going to get better at doing it. And if you practice love, joy, happiness, gratitude, you probably get better at doing that too. That we know. Neuroscience verifies that. Okay? I've had some great teachers, past and present, and some of the great teachers I've had work in the field of neuroscience, and we know now that you can rewire the brain. Being aware is really important. What you practice grows stronger, and we'll do a couple of gentle exercises before the close of play today. We'll do one more exercise that I'll leave you with, and you can share this exercise with whoever you care to share it with. It's gentle exercise, and one way to galvanize an emotion and maybe develop a new pathway, or perhaps strengthen a pathway that's already there. Choose the emotion that you want to experience, whatever that emotion might be. It could be love, it could be gratitude. It could be one or the other above, or whatever you care to. And when you choose the emotion, you can practice working on it, and you can practice the emotion growing stronger and stronger. And if you want to, when you're doing an exercise shortly, you can place your hand on your heart. And we know that by doing that, you release a chemical, and neuroscientists will really love this because they can back it up for research, called oxytocin. Okay? And that's a powerful chemical that bonds the mother with the child when the child's born for the first couple of years. And we know that in a biochemically functioning mum, it's produced in abundance, but there's a spectrum. Okay? That's why the baby can do no wrong for the first couple of years. So perhaps you'd like to choose an emotion, whatever it is, and perhaps you'd like to close your eyes again, and you can keep your eyes, it's entirely up to you, and just go to the feeling, whatever that feeling is that you like to experience. So be it love, be it gratitude, be it something that works for you. Perhaps you'd like to place your hand on your heart, that's your call, what you do, and really feel it. Go to the feeling first. Knowing that when you get up, when you go to work in the morning, you want your staff to be motivated, then you go there first. If you've got children, you want them to be confident, then you find a way to go there first. If you're a therapist and you've got a client coming in, you want them to be more peaceful, then you practice it first. Okay? And really feel it. And the mind being the way it is, if you feel any negative thoughts come into your mind, rather than fight them, let them disintegrate into the atmosphere. And as you let them disintegrate into the atmosphere, just hold on to that feeling and let it form a pathway in the brain or reinforce an existing pathway. And the more you do it, becomes stronger. And isn't it wonderful to be able to strengthen that pathway? Just think of the future, a day, a week, a month from now, if you can raise that level of emotion. Let's say you could raise the default for love, the default for gratitude, the default how different your behavior would be. You may stop looking outside for it because it's inside. So the path to maladaptive behavior is looking for outside. Outside for love, outside for one thing, outside for the other. Find that within. Become more adaptive. And in your own time, in your own place, you can come back here and now. Okay. So these are exercises that are really powerful. They work really, really well. And people say, well, how often should I do it? And how often should I do one thing or the other? And I know when I do pain relief in hypnosis, they say, well, what if the script doesn't work anymore after I've done it 10 times? We'll do another one. It's like a pain relief tablet. You don't take one and you're pain-free forever, then you take another one. The only difference is with these things, there's no artificial chemicals that are going to do you no harm. It can't do you no harm to go to that feeling. And it doesn't cost you anything. And
some people might have a default level that's higher than one or the other, and some people might be, through life experience, biology, a number of factors, but we can all improve. We can all be the best we can be, whatever that best is. And we know that we can get to the best that we can be, we can be more adaptive in our behavioural patterns and go forward. So we've sort of run out of time. There's a lot more I would have loved to have covered, but there's never enough time to cover everything that we want to cover. It could have been the next 10 weeks, so to speak, and covered a lot. Please feel free to email me, and the stream will be available as well on Facebook, watching me. And any comments that you got, anything we covered this evening, you can certainly email me. I'll send you some more information, as much as you need, around the things that we've covered, how to integrate the approach. And sometimes we watch it again, and we sort of pick up one thing and watch it again and pick up something else. But feel free to email me anything you've got about this evening. I think it's wonderful. I think we live in a great era because we're learning a lot more of technology, and I think that neuroscience has really taken things a lot further forward than it has in the past. And I think if nothing else, what I find really amazing, it's really interesting. And I last year when I was one of my teachers, one of my mentors over the years, Jeff Seid, was at the Erickson Foundation. Milton Erickson being the famous hypnotherapist, I never got to meet him. He was gone before I made my way into the hypnotherapy. And I sat down and had a moment in Arizona on the masterclass and said, Jeff, isn't it ironic really, as I make my journey to neuroscience, that some of the stuff that Erickson was doing all those years ago was so ahead of his time? Was he aware that the brain was actually restructuring itself, doing what he was doing? Perhaps he wasn't, perhaps he was, but he was a social psychologist before social psychology existed. So it's really fascinating stuff, I think. And I think for me, for those of you who have any reservations, I get asked the question a lot in the conferences I do, what do you think is more useful? CBT, hypnosis, NLP, and I don't have any favoritism only other than we can integrate all. And I'm a big believer that we should all actually have an open dialogue amongst professionals, because we don't all have the answers. And what I would say, I think we know too little to favour one modality, and I think we know too much to favour one of the other two. We've got to have an open mind. So we know too little not to have the open mind, and we know too much to have an open mind. So I think there's new technology coming in all the time. I'm very fortunate to read a lot of articles and journals and get to see some of the impact that some of this stuff has from a scientific point of view. And I'm going to carry on doing that as long as I do what I do. I think it's quite fascinating. And one of the things I think is quite fascinating and amazing, that your past doesn't equal the future, and we can make change. The best way to make change is to do in the now and go from there. So I'll be around for slightly a few minutes or so, because I think they probably want to pack up here now. But if you've got any questions, otherwise, do feel free to fire away, and do email me. Thank you for coming along. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Jimmy, can you
Oh, that's okay. I'm just going to switch this.